Esteemed audience at home, the journey has been long.
The search has been thorough.
But we are down to the final two.
Who will be the next great debater, Kisumu region? This is the Great Debaters Contest. I am your host, Chris Boru.
And I am Esperanza Kapanga.
The motion being debated this final is, capitalism needs poverty for it to thrive.
In the proposition, we have the gentleman from Maseno School.
And in the opposition, we have Maranda High School. Proposer number one, you have 3 minutes to present your case.
Capitalism needs poverty for it to thrive. That is the motion. Well, I do support that. And in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you why I do. Now, capitalism is an economic system where private entities own the factors of production, e.g. capital, labor, and land. To thrive is simply flourishing and to do well. Poverty is the state of being extremely poor and having insufficient basic needs, such as food, clothing, and shelter. So, according to the Vanguard, they say that Africa's poor prevalence rate is at 40%. So, as Africa, do we need capitalism? At 40% poor prevalence rate? I don't think we do. So, my first point is about how capitalism, if introduced, helps in exploiting the poor people. Now, the minority private sector in capitalist economies do not do anything, as the poor people have the sole ability to invest in industries and other businesses. So you see, the rich people keep their money in banks. The poor people, the money is taken from their pockets. Hey, you know what? Bring your money. It's the one you need for development. Is that what we need? I don't think we do. Now, as such, they dominate commercial activities with continued accruing of profits. And remember, these profits, of course, there is corruption, is a major problem in our country. They don't go back to these guys' pockets. These profits, they go to big people's profits and pockets, and they are not coming out. Like, money is lost because of capitalism, and we don't see it helping us. So, I'm a poor person, yes. My money was taken, yes. I've not seen any development, yes. Now, monopoly of private entities leads to their setting of high charges, inflation of prices. And remember, inflation of prices will affect the poor person, common mwananchi, wanjiko. So, a price is high. The government will say, okay, we're going to change the price of unga, it's 90 bob. Do you think a person who is in the capitalist bracket will be affected by unga? He probably doesn't even take ugali in the first place. Now, thus increasing the cost of living. Dear audience, the cost of living. The cost of living is you and I having to fight for survival. Do we have to fight for survival? I don't think we should fight for survival. When we have people who should be implementing development projects, making our lives better as a country, I don't think we should be fighting for survival. We should be enjoying the benefits of the opposite of capitalism. So, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know why we are having an opposition to such a straight matter as capitalism needs poverty to thrive in. In the first place, Africa, we are already poor. We don't need more poor people. I don't think we do. Thank you.
First proposer, you have 3 minutes to present your case.
They say, for one to win against an enemy, one has to master the pros and cons of the enemy. In my case, I have come as an opposer of this motion that states that capitalism needs poverty for it to thrive. But first, what are these pros and cons? Capitalism. This is an economic system in which a country's business and industry are controlled and run for by profit by the owners of the government. What is poverty? World Bank states that to be poor is to be hungry, to lack shelter, and to lack clothing. Living in poverty means more than this. Poor people are particularly vulnerable to adverse events outside their control. They're often treated badly by the factors and institutions of state and society, and excluded from the voice of power in these institutions. All this from World Bank. What are factors of production? Factors of production are things needed to make goods and services, i.e. labor, land, and capital. On to my first point. An important feature of capitalism is the freedom of exchange. Everyone is allowed to trade. Everyone is a capitalist in a capitalist country. Has the right to engage in exchanges. This is so when in a country, everyone is given the opportunity to go to the market. Everyone has the opportunity. The willingness is in everyone. It depends. So this really doesn't justify the case that poverty should be used for capitalism to exist in a country or in an organization. For a capitalism country to thrive, we require goods and services, trade. Capitalism needs availability of goods, the willingness of those to trade. Isn't the opportunity to trade equal? If I am rich, can't I also engage myself to trade? Considering a person who is a trader and is poor and seeks to get rich, regardless of the poverty, isn't capitalism also going to exist in that country? Thank you. My name is Andy Onyango from Maranda High School.
Second proposer, you have 3 minutes for cross-examination.
Well. There are some to say that you can't be man enough, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you are an extraordinary man. And that's why Anthony Harvard considers himself an extraordinary man to stand before you to fully affirm the motion that states capitalism needs poverty to thrive. I'd like to ask a question to the opposers. How is a poor man a capitalist in a majority poor economy country? How? I will also like to ask, how is a poor man able to invest, yet the poor man cannot even get his basic needs in a capitalistic state? On to my first point. Capitalism needs stratified society. The gap between the poor and the rich needs to be wide so that capitalism can succeed. The gap must be wide in order for the rich to continue exploiting the poor, to continue monopolizing the economy. On to my second point. Capitalism needs the minority-rich private sector in a capitalist economy to monopolize the majority over the majority poor people. In a capitalist economy, it is only business-oriented. This leads to accruing of huge profits. Hence, this brand expands. Finally, it dominates. Hence, it monopolizes. Hence, this sector can set high charges, we'll have high cost of living, low living standards, and finally, they can do what they want. They can lower the quality of products in order to fit the low buying rates of the society. My third point, capitalist economy needs exploitation of the poor and skilled laborers. The desperate, unemployed, and poor people have no option. They'll have to work for these people. It's either they take the low pay or go home with none. Is it only sensible that the poor, unemployed, and desperate will opt to take this? Ladies and gentlemen, I could expound in many points the essence of poverty being for capitalism to succeed. But for the case of time, I'd love to stop it here. I rest my case.
Second opposer, you have 3 minutes for cross-examination.
We have three elements of capitalism that have not been clearly defined or clearly understood by our fellow proposers. And one of the elements I would like to talk about is capital accumulation. That is one of the elements of capitalism that anybody who proposes this motion should clearly understand what is capital accumulation. The second standard of basing capitalism is competition. And the third factor is our price system. Those are the three elements that should be clearly understood when we come here to speak about capitalism. On to my first point, when the proposer said we have people who are very rich and they take their money to the banks, then after taking their money to the banks, we are going to have money being taken to investment programs. I'm sorry to disagree by saying one of the essentials of capitalism is property rights. And that directly applies to what you're talking about. We are trying to say those people, they must not be that poor for us to raise our levels of living. Those people, for capitalism to work properly, the one aspect is property rights. A good example is Robert Kiyosaki. Robert Kiyosaki talks of types of income. When we speak of types of income, we have earned income and portfolio income. So the poor people, they work for earned income, but the rich, they work for portfolio income. So that is what we're trying to say, that these people can be mid-class, but at the same time, capitalism is working for the nation. Another good example, Karen and Kibera. Please compare the environs. We have Karen this side, and we have Kibera this side. Karen, it's good. Yes, we agree they have money, but look at Kibera. It's not a place that somebody will be so happy to live in. Why? Because their capitalism, they saw the need for poverty. But you're trying to say, Karen can be there, but the living standards in Kibera can still be raised to the middle income earner. Another good example is when we speak about the motive of the profit market. When we speak about the motive of a profit market, I'm going to talk about one country in particular, that is Brunei. Brunei is in Southeastern Asia, and it's a country that is fifth globally in terms of wealth. So this country apparently has oil as its major export, and in their legislative framework, they have respect for the profit motive. That is, their middle income earners, in terms of education, in terms of health, in terms of their health system, in terms of their income, and in terms of their income tax, the taxpayers are not allowed to pay. That it is subsidized. So that is why it as a country, its GDP for the last 3 years has been growing by 16%. Why? Because the middle income earner has been raised through emotive profit. So that is what we're trying to talk about. We're not trying to say that capitalism, it needs poverty to thrive. It does not need. Brunei is a country that embraces capitalism, but most of its citizens, 59% of its citizens are middle income earners. 50% of the world's population, they live on $2.5 a day. And 1.3 billion live in extreme poverty. Yet we still come here to say that capitalism needs poverty to thrive. I wonder it's which kind of poverty. My name is John Matthew from Maranda High School. Thank you.
The question to the proposers is, why are they making the assumption that capitalism will lead to poverty, and how will that happen? The opposers have been asked, if we have middle income earners in the capitalist countries, then who will work for the capitalists, considering that they will not be able to pay the kind of salary that would pay middle income earners and still be able to make a large margin of profit? Proposer number 3, you have 3 minutes to answer the question.
Capitalism, in the words of the first president of Tanzania, Julius Nyerere, is basically the creator of a man-eat-man society. That is why Nyadu Otieno of Maseno School seeks to affirm that capitalism requires poverty in order to thrive. One question posed to the proposers is, why do you assume that capitalism causes poverty? I would say we are not saying that. All we are saying is that capitalism needs poverty in order to thrive, as I will illustrate. The opposers were talking about protectionist policies in markets. I would begin. One of the major characteristics of a capitalist economy is presence of privately owned capital markets. Capital markets, I'm speaking about banking and insurance. Now you find that the capital markets seem to thrive in capitalist economies. This is the reason why. The lower class, the poor, the small business holders are not having a good source of capital. As a result, what they do is to turn to loans. These loans from these capital markets are charged at high interest rates. As a result, small business enterprises, when servicing these loans, end up having lower profit margins. In worse scenarios, when small businesses default their loans, their properties are auctioned to well-established and richer systems. Hence, the bigger businesses, the richer people, continue growing richer at the expense of the poor. In the year 2016-2017 financial year, the Central Bank of Kenya reports, Cooperative Bank made a profit of 35%. Equity Bank made a profit of 25%. The lowest performer was Kenya Commercial Bank, a state-owned corporation, at 16%. If we take the profit margins of Cooperative Bank, that combines the manufacturing, agriculture, and other sectors combined to total to 35%. Protectionist policies like interest cap rates, so that businesses are able to expand, also make the poor people to shy away from, make banks to shy away from giving loans to small businesses. As such, the established ones are growing at the expense of the poor. I rest my case.
Third opposer, you have 3 minutes to respond to your question.
Sandy of Maseno School asked how we could have people working for capitalists without them being poor. What I'm trying to say is 75% of the people deemed rich according to Forbes magazine are self-enterprising. They're either actors, musicians, businessmen, and the like. That means that for us to survive, we don't have to work for anyone. According to the BBC, the autonomy of machines means that about 80 million people lose their jobs, manual jobs in this case, annually. That means that machines are taking over the manual sector. So we don't even need those people to work there for capitalist people. And according to him, the capitalist system means that people borrow loans, and these loans have high interest charges, which means that they'll make either low profit margins or something like that. But Sustainable Development Goal, Zero Hunger, it wants to, no poverty, reduction of poverty. It aims to reduce poverty, yet it does not aim to do away with capitalism. According to Winston Churchill, the inherent vice of capitalism is the unequal sharing of blessings. The inherent virtue of socialism is the equal sharing of miseries. What does that mean? When you have socialist stands, people are sharing their poverty. But when we have capitalism, people can be somewhere, though they're not all rich, and we can have the others on top. What do you prefer? Everyone poor, or some people rich and some people somewhere? Capitalism is wonderful, is a loud refrain. Free trade is a perfect legislation. We are told again and again, yes, capitalism enhances inequality, but inequality is not poverty. According to Ben Shapiro, socialism states that you owe me something simply because I exist. Capitalism, by contrast, results in a sort of reality-forced altruism. I may not give you a product or service you want. you will starve. That means people have to work for what they have. So voluntary exchange is more moral than forced redistribution. And voluntary exchange doesn't mean people have to be poor. Let's take capitalist countries like Germany. Germany is one of the most economically developed countries in this world. Compare Germany to a socialist country like Tanzania. Tanzania, according to Quora, socialist countries like Tanzania have 21% of their population below destitute poverty, and another 27 just close to the poverty line. That is a total of about 48 people around poverty. In Germany, 6.5% are the people around that same place. What does that tell you? I'm Brian Monari. Thank you.
Proposers, you have 1 minute for a final submission.
Second opposer, people in Kibera did not choose to be poor. They did not. Please. You know, GDC for SDGs. You tell me, how does capitalism help us achieve no poverty? How? I don't see. McHugh, countries that are capitalist states, according to Tuko News, which are United States of America, Canada, and Hong Kong, these are first world countries. So you want to tell me, as a third world country, we want to imitate a first world country. Do we even have the money? Do we? Come on, let's be realistic. Did you know that in the United States, if you are 18 years of age, your parents will give you an amount of money to start your own businesses? In Kenya, if I complete Form 4, I don't even know what my parents will tell me. Huh? In Kenya, if we start bringing in capitalism, my parents might even tell me, my son, you know what? You just go and look for your own business, huh? You're an 18-year-old, you know what to do. So please, people, let us open our eyes. As the youth of these citizens, we don't want capitalism for us. What we want is development. Capitalism will never help us achieve anything.
Opposers, you have 1 minute to make a final submission.
It's not that we don't want capitalism, because already as we stand and speak, Kenya is a capitalist nation. So the question here is not a question of we want capitalism, the question is on poverty. That is sustainable development goal number 1. According to a research by World Bank, it says that citizens in the UK, 1% of citizens in the UK are living below the $5 level. But let's refer it back to Kenya. In Kenya, around 45% are living below $1. And look at the UK. The UK as a country in itself, we find most people are the middle income earners. So we are speaking of people being middle income earners and having capitalists who are extremely rich. So that is what we are advocating for. You know, do we understand the meaning of a society? Society is where everybody feels comfort. Everybody can afford a meal, not just a meal, but a quality meal. That is the meaning of a society. But I'm not, because these dark days will soon be over. Because for us to raise a society, history has to be written. And when history is written, it means everybody is to be inclusive in creating a society that is opposed to poverty and a society that is a middle income earning society. So that is why we advocate for zero poverty, so that we can have a sustainable society. Thank you. My name is Joe Matthew.
The proposer's side. The first speaker, you did a good job. The second speaker, you were a bit shaky. Your cross-examination was inadequate. Otieno, initially very shaky, but towards the end, you stabilized, and congratulations, that's good. To the opposer's side, Andy, I want to be sincere. I saw an improvement from what I have been seeing, and that is commendable. Matthew, as usual, you didn't disappoint. Brian, you didn't get the question quite clearly. I felt you were a bit evasive, but then later on you came on with some relevant points, relevant analogies, and good comparative analysis, which to me was a plus to your side. Thanks for a job well done. May the best team win.
Andy Jr. from Maranda Boys High School. You did your work well. You defined the terms. You gave the sources. And you didn't exhaust a given aspect that could give us why it is not poverty, it is something else. Thanks to Joe Matthew, when you came in, we saw capitalism. We saw it differently, and that it does not base its anchor on poverty. That was very good. You talked about rights, and you showed that poverty is a thing that capitalism needs to fight, and that was very good. Brian Monari, when you went into the question, you appeared that you were losing the focus of the question that you were asked, but equally giving, you came back to your own points to support capitalism. And your witty examples and quotes from Winston Churchill are a convincing lot to give. In my submission, I want to say that both teams have done the best they could in this particular motion. May the best team win.
Proposers' side, you tried in making us understand what capitalism is, but it still wasn't quite there. Although it was a very good introduction, you set the pace for the debate as usual, Caleb. And then you steered into the disadvantages of capitalism without showing us how the environment of poverty makes it thrive. So that one eluded you a little bit. Opposers' side, the first speaker seemed not to have understood the motion. It is until Joe spoke, the second speaker, that everybody seemed to understand what we are talking about. Otherwise, I enjoyed the spirited fight that was exhibited by both teams, and I'm still very proud of you.